So I think that if there is a lockout, if there is a strike, then it would just undo all of the hard work, all of the growth that the league has experienced. Now, what I find to be very interesting about fantasy football this year, especially in comparison to last season, is that this season is very, very receiver heavy. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people do feel that this is just not enough. I think that these is just a lot of penalties. Now, do I think that the championship should be vacated? Absolutely. Not only because of the fact that he's the youngest to reach the title, but also because I feel like he does not get the recognition that he deserves. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new episode of Ball Talk with Chanel. If you're new here, hello, welcome. This podcast covers everything that has happened in the last week, from men's sports to women's sports, from collegiate sports to professional sports, from domestic leagues to international leagues. So, this episode will be split into 4 sections. In the first section, it will be covering all about the WNBA. We are about 3 weeks away from the end of the regular season, so I'll be talking about what the current rankings are as of right now, what the playoff picture would look like if the playoffs were to start today, as well as talk about some of the latest news that's happened in the last week, from A'ja Wilson breaking a record to a potential lockout in the WNBA. The next section will cover everything going on in the NFL. I'll be giving the latest news that's happened in the last week, from a brawl that's happened amongst the Cincinnati Bengals players during practice to what the rankings are looking like as of right now for fantasy football. In the next section, I'll be covering college football. I'll be giving you the latest news from a player being suspended to the opening kickoff that is this upcoming weekend and what we should all be looking for. In the last section, I want to talk about tennis. We had the National Bank Open in the last week, so I want to talk about the final for both men's singles and women's singles. And then afterwards, I want to talk about the Cincinnati Open. We are about to head into the final for both men's singles and women's singles. So I want to recap everything that's happened in the last week, as well as give my predictions as to who I think are going to win in the final. So, with all that being said, let's get on with the episode. So, starting with the first section, the WNBA. Let's look at where we are at right now. We are about 3 weeks away from the end of the regular season. Yes, that fast. We are less than a month away from the postseason. So, let's look at what the standings are as of right now. So, at the top of the league, who has been at the top for a while and actually clinched a playoff spot, were none other than the Minnesota Lynx. They are top of the league with a 28-15 record. And they have been dominating. Like I said, they clinched a playoff spot. They are the only team as of right now who has clinched a playoff spot. And this was absolutely well-deserved. They have been playing so good, especially with players such as Courtney Williams and Nafisa Collier. Now, who are right underneath the Minnesota Lynx are not the New York Liberty, but the Atlanta Dream. Yes, they have jumped the New York Liberty in the standings to take the second place position with a 21-12 record. Now, of course, we can thank players such as Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard, but they have had such a great season. Now, right underneath the Atlanta Dream are the New York Liberty with a 21-13 record. Now, it is unfortunate that the Liberty are without their star player, Breanna Stewart, but nevertheless, they are still doing good, being top 5 in the league in the standings, especially with Sabrina and Jonquel, especially just stepping up. I mean, the Liberty are still doing good. Despite being jumped by the Atlanta Dream, they are still doing really well. Now, right underneath the New York Liberty are the Phoenix Mercury with a 19-12 record. Now, their success is, of course, in large part due to Alyssa Thomas. How great of a season she's having, how many times she's been hitting a triple-double in the games. I mean, they have had such a great season. Now, right underneath the Mercury are A'ja Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces with an 18-14 record. Now, A'ja has been having a great season. It is purely the reason why she is in talks of being the MVP for this season. They are just having such a good season. They did start out the season a little bit slower, a little bit weak, but now they are making a strong finish, finishing up now in 5th. And let's just see if they'll be able to jump a lot more teams in the standings. And right underneath the Aces are not the Indiana Fever anymore, but the expansion team, the Golden State Valkyries. The Golden State Valkyries are sixth in the league with an 18-14 record. And they have been playing so good this entire season. Of course, they're not going to be top of the league, of course, like the Lynx or the Liberty. But listen, for a team that just existed as of this season and they are very, very new, they have had such a great, successful season. And I think that they absolutely will be in the playoffs. I mean, they've been playing so well, playing such great team ball. You see the way that they're able to pass off to each other, the way they're able to hit the threes, hit the post. Just everything about their game is just beautiful. Now, right underneath the Golden State Valkyries are the Indiana Fever with an 18-16 record. Now, look, despite the fact that the Fever has gone majority of the season without Caitlin Clark, they have been playing so well. You saw how Aaliyah Boston, Natasha Howard, Kelsey Mitchell, how much they have stepped up in their roles to really try to fill in the gaps that Caitlin Clark provided for the team. I mean, they've been playing such great ball even without her, and it is exciting to see their success. I mean, despite losing out on their superstar player just due to a very injury-prone season, it is still great to see them still stand up on their toes, standing tall, and really making an impact this season. And then right underneath the Fever are the Seattle Storm with an even 17-17 record. Now, their success, of course, is in large part due to players such as Skylar Diggins and Nneka Ogwumike, who are just having such great seasons. So, those are the 8 teams as of right now where if the playoffs were to start today, they will be the teams that are in the playoffs. So, if the playoffs were to start today, you would have the Lynx versus the Storm, the Dream versus the Fever, the Liberty versus the Valkyries, and the Mercury versus the Aces. Now, I do think that for the most part, these are going to be the teams in the playoffs, but listen, no team is safe. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this section, we are still 3 weeks away. And it's not as if the records right now are super far away from each other. As an example, let's look at the Seattle Storm, who I mentioned beforehand has an even 17-17 record. Right underneath the Seattle Storm are the LA Sparks with a 16-17 record. And right underneath the Sparks even are the Washington Mystics with a 15-18 record. So, like I said, for the most part, I think these are going to be the teams that are going to be in the playoffs. Now, what their seeding exactly is going to be really does depend on how the rest of the season goes. Like I said, the records are super close. Each team is about 1 or 2 games away from each other. So the seeding in it of itself is going to be interesting. But when you look at teams such as the Seattle Storm, it is still uncertain as to whether they would make a playoff appearance or not. With the Sparks right underneath them and even the Mystics not being too far away. I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see if these same 8 teams can really maintain their position right now in the standings and whether they can make this playoff run. So that's enough playoff talk as of right now. Let's move away from that and let's talk about the latest news that has happened in the league in the last week. Starting first with A'ja Wilson, one of the best players in the league, okay? She just broke a record when the Aces were facing the Connecticut Sun. She dropped 32 points and snagged 20 boards. She is the first WNBA player ever in history to have a 30-20 game. Do you understand how crazy that is? Having 30 points and 20 rebounds. Now, I know a lot of people want to talk down about it and say, well, it's very easy to get a rebound because it's the WNBA, blah, 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 blah. I mean, let's be honest. When Nikola Jokic drops 30, 40 points with 20 boards and everything else, people talk about how he's one of the greatest players to ever play the sport. He is so great. He's the GOAT, right? This is Joker level stuff, blah, 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 blah. But when A'ja Wilson drops 30 points with 20 rebounds, nobody wants to really give her credit. Now, why is that? Now, you may be saying, well, NBA players are so much more talented than WNBA players. It's not like A'ja Wilson is playing against NBA players. They're still playing amongst their own competition. Nikola Jokic is not the only 7-foot center in the league. A'ja Wilson is not the only 6'3", 6'4" player in the league. In fact, there are players that are as big, if not bigger, than her. So why is it that Joker can get all the love and respect, but A'ja Wilson gets discredited? I think that's just very interesting. But nevertheless, A'ja Wilson is a truly dominant player. She is one of the best players in the WNBA. And I think more people need to give her the respect and the love that she absolutely deserves. Because that is an insane record to break in the WNBA. I mean, I just love A'ja. I love what she does. I love how she plays the game. And I think she is going to continue to be dominant for the next few years. Like I said, one of the best players in the league, hands down. So, moving away from A'ja Wilson, now I want to talk about the Rookie of the Year race. Now, in episode 9 of my podcast episode, I did talk about who I thought was going to win Rookie of the Year, and I still hold on to that same belief. So if you want to hear about who I think is going to win Rookie of the Year, as well as who I think are going to win all the other WNBA individual awards, then you can go check out that episode. But what I want to talk about with this Rookie of the Year race is that it is such a tight race between Paige Bueckers and Sonia Citron. It has been an absolute debate as to who should get Rookie of the Year. So to provide a little bit of context, let me give you the stats for each of these players. So, Paige is averaging 18.8 points per game, and Sonia is averaging 15 points per game. Paige is averaging 4.1 rebounds per game, and Sonia is averaging 4.4 rebounds per game. Paige is averaging 5.4 assists per game, and Sonia is averaging 2.5 assists per game. Paige is averaging 1.7 steals per game, and Sonia is averaging 1.2 steals per game. Paige is averaging 0.6 blocks per game, and Sonia is averaging 0.4 blocks per game. Paige is shooting 49.5% from the field, and Sonia is averaging 46.5% from the field. Paige is shooting 31.6% from 3, and Sonia is shooting 39.4% from 3. And finally, Paige is shooting 87.8% from the free throw line, and Sonia is shooting 87.3% from the free throw line. So you can just see from these stats how close they are as far as their overall season stats. Now, of course, the Washington Mystics are performing a lot better than the Dallas Wings, okay? The Dallas Wings are not performing that well this season, and I've talked about it in previous episodes as to what I think they should do, so you can go check it out. I'm not going to reiterate it. And a lot of people have looked at their recent matchup where Sonia did put up a better performance just from a statistical standpoint. She put up a better performance than Paige did, and people want to look at that and determine that Sonia should be getting Rookie of the Year over Paige. And what I want to say is that we should not be looking at just one game to determine who is Rookie of the Year. We need to be looking at how they are performing as a whole. So, did Sonia perform better than Paige in that game? Yes. But if you look overall, they're very comparable when it comes to stats. Yes, Paige beats Sonia in a couple of the categories, and Sonia beats Paige in a couple of the categories. I mean, who the decision comes down to, I think, is going to be really, really close. It is not going to be a unanimous decision whatsoever. Now, I have personally not changed my opinion as to who I think should get Rookie of the Year, but I mean, if they gave it to one or the other, I would not be upset. Now, like I mentioned before, if you want to hear who I picked and who I think should be getting Rookie of the Year, then please go check out episode 9 where I talked about it. Now, moving away from Rookie of the Year, I want to talk about a big news that has hit, which is that WNBA players and NBA players are able to play on the same team in 2K. Now, a lot of people want to talk about how this is very unrealistic and this is unbelievable because how is someone like Angel Reese going to get a rebound over someone like Shaquille O'Neal? And I just want to say that 2K is purely just unrealistic in general, okay? You could have the most random player score 60, 70 points. So I don't want to hear this whole argument about let's be realistic, because ultimately the game in it of itself is extremely unrealistic. You will have players who in real life can't even score 20 points in a single game, and yet for some reason on 2K they're dropping like 50 points. So I think that people need to stop using that let's be realistic argument because it fundamentally does not work. But I do think that this is a very good idea. And the reason why I think this is a good idea is for two reasons. One, I think there will be a lot more exposure to the WNBA, especially. I know there are a lot of people who don't really know a lot about the WNBA. They don't know a lot of players. They may know, of course, Paige Beckers. They may know Caitlin Clark. They may know Angel Reese, but then that's it. They don't know Nafisa Collier. They don't know Sabrina Ionescu. They don't know Asia Wilson. They don't know Brianna Stewart. They don't know all of the other players. So I think by having 2K have it to where the WNBA and NBA players are playing together, it does bring a lot more exposure to the players. It allows people to become a lot more aware of these players. And let's say, for example, you're playing as Brianna Stewart on a team and you're thinking, you know what, I want to see how she plays in real life. And so then you would tune into a Liberty game. I think it is such a great idea to bring more exposure to the WNBA because that is what they need, especially to grow the league. And the second reason why I think this is a good idea is because it just makes the game a lot more interesting. Like, imagine playing as, for example, the Golden State Warriors, and you have Steph Curry and Caitlin Clark on your team. Like, that is sick. If I was the other person, if I was the opponent, I would be scared. I would think that I am cooked because how am I guarding both Steph Curry and Caitlin Clark? Or imagine someone like on the Lakers and you see Paige Beckers on the team, right? I mean, it is such an interesting concept. It is such a great idea. And I hope 2K continues to do this in the future because I think this is a great, great feature to have in the game. Now, before we move on to the next section, I want to talk quickly about the CBA. Now, I've already talked about this in previous episodes, so if you want the full updates, if you want the full negotiations and what has happened so far, what even happened in the first place, then you can go check out all of the previous episodes. But what I want to say here is that we are about 2 months away from the CBA currently expiring. So, as the days go on, as the time is ticking, there is the question of whether there will be a lockout. Now, I personally don't think that there will be a lockout. I think that both the league and the players are going to try to avoid that as much as possible. But listen, we are about 2 months away from the current CBA expiring. So, it really could be a possibility. But I think if there is a lockout, I think if there is a strike among the players, it is just not going to be a good idea for anybody. The league has seen such exponential growth when it comes to the viewership, the attendance, the jersey sales. Everything has grown in the past season and a half. So I think that if there is a lockout, if there is a strike, then it would just undo all of the hard work, all of the growth that the league has experienced. It would just undo all of that, and it's almost like we would have to start from square one. But I think that it will be in the best interest of both the players and the league to avoid a lockout, avoid a strike as much as they possibly can. That is just in the best interest of everyone. I do think, though, like I said before, I do think that they will come to an agreement. I think they will come to a mutual understanding. I would say probably by the beginning of October. I think it'll be one of those very last minute, okay, the CBA has been agreed upon and it is about to take into effect. I think that we are going to see that because, like I've been emphasizing, just a strike, a lockout does not serve anybody. In fact, it hurts everybody. So hopefully we will get more updates on what happened with the CBA negotiations. Hopefully we will get a mutual understanding, a mutual agreement relatively soon because a strike and a lockout is the last thing we all need. So with all of that, now let's move on to the next section, which is all about the NFL. So let's talk about some of the latest news that has happened in the last week. So first, I want to talk about the brawl that happened in the Bengals practice. So there was a video that was shown in which there was pretty much a fight during the Bengals practice. And the reason why was because rookie edge Shamar hit Joe Burrow. And that kind of caused a big argument and fight amongst the players. Now, you may be wondering, well, he is an edge. I don't understand as to why there was a fight in the first place. He was basically doing his job. Two things, okay? One, it is practice. So Joe Burrow is basically the face of the team. He is your money. So you don't want to hit Joe Burrow and cause him to be injured before the regular season even starts. So that's one. But the bigger problem was that Joe Burrow was wearing a red shirt, and the red shirt means do not hit me. Now, what I will say though, just from watching the video, is I couldn't tell if it was an accident or if it was intentional. Because looking at the video, it does seem like Shamar was actually falling, and that's what caused him to hit Joe. But either way, it seemed like it was a rookie mistake. Just a big rookie mistake. You don't want to do that. And hopefully Shamar did learn from that if it was intentional. And hopefully he does not do that again, because the last thing you want is to be benched by the coach because you hit the moneymaker. You hit Joe Burrow while at practice and nearly caused him to be injured. So the next news I want to talk about is with rookie quarterback Cam Ward of the Tennessee Titans. Now, he did have a press conference last week, and he said that the Titans have the best receiving corps in the entire league. So, just to give a little bit of context, the main receivers that are on the Titans are Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, and Van Jefferson. Now, look, I love Cam Ward, okay? I am a big Cam Ward fan. I love his leadership. I love his talent. I just love everything about him, okay? I think he is such a great player. I've spoken about it before. I think he is going to have a good season with the Titans. However, we do need to bring in a little bit of reality here. Calling those three receivers the best receiving corps in the entire league is a little delusional, and it's a little crazy. Look, I understand you're the quarterback. You are the leader of the team. You can't talk smack about your team. You can't talk bad about them. You got to talk about your team as if they are the best in the league. I understand that completely. But for those who believe it, I'm sorry to break it to you, that's a little bit delusional. It is. It is just a little bit delusional. I wouldn't call them the best receiving corps in the league. I wouldn't even call them the best receiving corps in the AFC. Never mind the entire league. So I just love how Cam Ward is thinking. I love the positivity, but we also need to bring in a little bit of reality here, because that was a really, really nice statement to say about his teammates. But it was also a little bit delusional. But maybe sometimes that is just a delusion that you need in order to have a good season. Maybe that is the key to success, is just having a little bit of delusion. So, I don't know. I just thought that was a really, really interesting comment that he made. Again, understand why, because you are the quarterback, but again, just really not the reality of things. Now, before I move on to the next section, I want to talk about fantasy football. Let's look at who are the top 10 ranked players in fantasy. And this is according to Yahoo. You have Jamar Chase at 1, Bijan Robinson at 2, Saquon Barkley at 3, Jahmyr Gibbs at 4, Justin Jefferson at 5, CeeDee Lamb at 6, Nico Collins at 7, Christian McCaffrey at 8, Malik Nabers at 9, and Derrick Henry at 10. Now, what I find to be very interesting about fantasy football this year, especially in comparison to last season, is that this season is very, very receiver heavy. It looks like the fantasy football analysts are looking at the receivers giving you the most fantasy points. They think that the receivers are going to be more of an impactful player on the team rather than the running backs, because it seems like the running backs were more of the focus from last season. I think it is very interesting that it was switched and that it is going to be more of the receivers, because I feel like it's going to be more of the running back. I understand why you would think it's the receivers, but I would think that it would still be the running backs like how it was last season. What I also find to be interesting is Christian McCaffrey being 8. Now, I think he is one of the best running backs in the league. I think my only concern is his availability. I am shocked that analysts still rank him as a top 10 player. And it has nothing to do with his talent. It genuinely has nothing to do with his talent. If he was available, I would call him a top 5 player. The problem is the availability. Is CMC going to be available? Is he going to be healthy for the entire season? Or are we going to have another season in which Christian is only available for 1 week and afterwards he is out for the rest of the season? I think because he is so injury prone, I thought they would put him more in like the 10 to 15 area, only because of availability. Now, whether you want to go and take the risk of picking up Christian McCaffrey, it is a very high risk, high reward, where, again, one of the best running backs in the league, if he is available, you are definitely going to get a lot of fantasy points from him. But if he's not available and he's out for the rest of the season, then that's where it's going to hurt your team the most. So I think him being at 8 was very interesting. I wonder if it's because the analysts have a little bit of faith that he will be healthy for the entire season. I just kind of expected for him to fall into the 10 to 15 range, like I said, only because of his availability. I think it is going to be a big gamble. It's going to be a risk as to whether you want to pick up Christian McCaffrey in the first round. But again, we're just going to have to wait and see. Let's just see exactly what happens. Now, before I move on to the next section, I want to take a quick break and tell you to check out the description box down below that gives you all of my social media accounts. If you want to hear some daily news and some daily takes, then you can go follow my TikTok, my Instagram, my Facebook pages. If you want to see what a day in the life looks like for me, then you can go follow my Snapchat. If you want to see some live game reactions and sports news reactions, then you can go check out my Threads and my X accounts. If you're listening to this on Spotify, please be sure to give this a 5-star rating. Please be sure to follow this page so you do not miss a single episode. If you are watching this on YouTube, please be sure to hit the thumbs up button down below. Be sure to subscribe to this channel and be sure to turn on notifications so you do not miss a single episode. So, now moving on to the next section, college football. So let's start first with some of the latest news that has happened. So starting first with Oklahoma quarterback John Matier, who may have been caught in engaging in sports gambling. So a screenshot of his recent Venmo transactions has been released, and it just says literally sports gambling. And it will list a game in which there was sports gambling. Now, the university has said that they are investigating into this matter, and Matier even came out with a statement saying that he did not engage in any sports gambling, that it looks worse than what it is, and that purely it was just an inside joke between him and his friends. Now, if you have used Venmo before, you know that it's not supposed to be just plainly, oh, here it is, what it is. You know, there's just a lot of jokes that are being made. You know, a lot of emojis being used and just a lot of fun when it comes to the descriptions for Venmo. Now, I think using the words sports gambling, especially being a collegiate athlete and you know the rules, is just not good. It's just not good. It almost gives the impression that you are trying to be caught in 4K. You are trying to be caught red-handed with the sports gambling. Now, whether this is actually an inside joke or not, I'm not sure. I honestly would give him the benefit of the doubt in that it is a joke. But using the word sports gambling and then actually naming the teams that are playing really does not look good. Now, do I think the university is going to do something? Probably not, because especially he's their starting quarterback. I think this whole thing is just crazy, and hopefully Matier has learned from this that if you're going to crack a joke, just don't use the words sports gambling. Like, use something else to crack a joke. Like, don't use the words sports gambling and then name the games that you were sports gambling in. Just don't do it. It just makes everything look a lot messier. Hopefully he has learned from this, and hopefully he does not make the same mistake again. So, moving away from that, let's look at actually a Big Ten player that was just suspended. So, we have Oregon wide receiver Jurrion Dickey, who was suspended from the team for an indefinite amount of time. Now, rumors were circulating saying that Dickey was arguing with teammates, he was arguing with coaches, he was even fighting with his teammates, and that was what caused his suspension. Now, whether those rumors are true or not, we do not know. What we do know is that the team does have 2 rules: be respectful, be on time. And Oregon head coach Dan Lanning actually spoke out about this. And just to paraphrase, he effectively said that it seemed like Dickey was not focused on the team and that the team really needs to focus on what's happening right now. So it seems like Dickey just kind of stepped away from the team. Maybe just needs a little bit of a break. Maybe there's something personal going on in his life. I think the rumors are just not true. I think probably there's just something that someone made up. It probably just could be a little bit of a personal issue. Maybe it was one argument rather than it making it seem like he's fighting everyone. Whatever the case may be, I hope Dickey does get the rest that he needs and hopefully he can clear his mind and we'll be able to see him back onto the field relatively soon. Now, if he is fighting with his teammates and he's fighting with the coaches, that's not good. I think that at that point he would need to hit the transfer portal because that's just not good to be fighting your teammates and arguing with coaches. But like I said before, I don't think that the rumor is true or it's just being exaggerated. He probably got into one argument and probably just needed to step away from the team. The team needed to separate from him just to kind of give each other a break. But we're just going to have to wait and see exactly what happens and whether we'll be able to see Dickey back onto the field during the regular season. Now, moving on from that, let's talk about the University of Michigan. So, let's go back to a few years ago. The University of Michigan came under fire for allegedly stealing signs from other teams, okay? Now, it was ran by Connor Stallions, but reports did say that he was hiring other people to go and basically steal the signs and then report back to him. Like, that is just crazy. So, the NCAA finally did their investigations. And I want to also remind people that Michigan won the championship back in 2023. Just keep that in mind, okay? And back in 2023, Jim Harbaugh actually had a suspension from some of the games because of the sign stealing. That was self-imposed. That was by the university. So the NCAA came back with their investigation, with their penalties, and basically, long story short, they got hit with a lot of fines, including 10% of the budget for the football program, 10% of the scholarships awarded for the football program, as well as $50,000, as well as a fine equal to the amount that was lost in revenue for postseason competition for this season and next season. They got hit with a lot of fines. They were also given a 14-week prohibition period in which they cannot do any sort of recruitment or communications during that time. They also got a 25% reduction in the amount of recruits that they could have. And also, too, there were show cause penalties for Jim Harbaugh, right, the former coach for Michigan, for Sharon Moore, who is the current head coach for Michigan. There was one for Connor Stallions and one for another Michigan staffer. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people do feel that this is just not enough. I think that these is just a lot of penalties. Now, do I think that the championship should be vacated? Absolutely. I think that the whole thing should be vacated. I think that the championship should not count, especially given that they were stealing signs during that season. But here's the thing. A lot of people feel that this is just not a big penalty. They say, oh, Michigan is one of the wealthiest football programs in the country. That does not take away from the fact that they owe probably an estimate of over $20 million. $20 million. That is still a lot for a fine, as well as a 14-week period where they cannot communicate to any recruits. So those recruits will be probably choosing other schools such as Oregon, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Texas, or maybe even Michigan State over Michigan because they cannot communicate to them. Now, what I will say, though, is that the only one that really does not make any sense is giving Jim Harbaugh a show cause penalty. Now, the reason why is because a show cause penalty, what it effectively means is that if a college wants to hire, in this case, Jim Harbaugh, then they would have to explain to the NCAA why he should be hired and explain how he would not make those violations ever again. Now, Jim has moved on. He is the current head coach for the Chargers. I don't think he's going to go back to college. So I don't think this show cause penalty is going to have any sort of effect on his life as of right now. Now, if he was still at Michigan, that's a little bit different. And if we all remember, as of right now, he currently has a show cause penalty for another case that's happened beforehand. So this current show cause penalty that the NCAA put onto Harbaugh will not commence until 2028 when the last show cause penalty expires. So either way, I think that penalty does not make any sense. I don't think that really affects Harbaugh whatsoever. Like I said, he's not even in college football world anymore. He's in the NFL. But outside of that penalty that didn't make any sense, I think the other penalties, the fine penalties, the recruitment penalties, I think all of that is going to take a hit on Michigan. It may not take a major hit, but I think either way, nevertheless, it will still take a hit onto the school. Now, the school is appealing this decision, so let's see if these penalties will hold up. I think they would because there is evidence of Michigan engaging in sign stealing. I mean, they're basically caught in 4K, so I don't think their appeal is going to hold up, but let's see exactly just what happens. So, before I move on to the last section, I want to talk about how this weekend officially starts college football season. So, we have 4 games this weekend. We have Iowa State versus Kansas State. We have Idaho State versus UNLV. We have Fresno State versus Kansas. And we have Sam Houston versus Western Kentucky. Now, you may be wondering when all of the big games come on, and that's not until the week afterwards. So, the weekend of August 29th. That is when all of the big games, that is your Texas Ohio State, that's your Miami Notre Dame, that's those games, that's that weekend. But nevertheless, it is very exciting to see college football back, to be able to sit down on your couch, relaxing, watching some football. I cannot wait for this. Now, one of the games I do want to talk about, though, is Iowa State versus Kansas State. Now, Kansas State is slowly but surely building up their football program. So I think Iowa State versus Kansas State is going to be a really good game. I do think Iowa State is going to win, but I think that it's going to be a really close game. We'll just have to wait and see. So, now moving on to the last section, which is all about tennis. Now, before I talk about the Cincinnati Open, I want to talk about the National Bank Open final that was last week. So, starting with the men's singles, we had the final between Ben Shelton and Karen Khachanov, in which Shelton won in 3 sets. Now, before we even talk about how great this win is for Shelton, let's talk about the fact that he is the youngest American to reach the title since Andy Roddick back in 2004. Ben Shelton is 22 years old. He's only 22. And he had to face Karen Khachanov, who is known to be a great tennis player. But he's also the youngest to even reach the title in the first place since Andy Roddick. Now, I think this is such a great win for Shelton. Not only because of the fact that he's the youngest to reach the title, but also because I feel like he does not get the recognition that he deserves. Now, of course, we're all focused on players such as Taylor Fritz and Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz, which, listen, they're all great players. Don't get me wrong. Don't think that I'm here saying that they are all trash, because they are far from that. They are great players. But I also think that Shelton needs to also be in that conversation of being such a good player. Now, granted, he is a second round, third round exit in almost every single tournament. But, I mean, if you actually watch, you see how much potential he has, how much skills he has. And I think that he is going to, as long as he continues to grow, be one of the best American tennis players, truthfully. I think he is going to be a top dog in the next few years. That's just my prediction. I think he is such a good player, and I am really glad that he won this final, because more people would recognize, too, how great of a player he is. And so, moving away from men's singles, now let's look at the women's singles. So, we had Naomi Osaka face Victoria Mboko, and Mboko won in 3 sets. Now, what's crazy about Mboko is that her path to the final was not easy, because in order to win, she had to face 4 Grand Slam champions: Sofia Kenin, Coco Gauff, Elena Rybakina, and then Naomi Osaka. And she is the youngest player to face 4 Grand Slam champions in a single tournament and also win on top of that. Like, that is insane. Now, Victoria is not as big of a name, of course, as someone like Coco or someone like Osaka, but The fact that she was still able to beat them, the fact that she was able to win that final, especially against Naomi, is so great for her. I feel like it just built up her brand. Like I said, she's only 18 years old, which means that her ceiling is not capped at this point. She has so much more to grow. She has so much more potential to be better, to show people as to why she is such a great player. And it just made me so happy just to see her at only 18 win a major open like the National Bank Open. It's a major, major congrats to Mboko, because that is such a great victory to have, similarly to Ben winning the men's singles for the National Bank Open. And so now that we've talked about the National Bank Open, now let's talk about the Cincinnati Open. And I want to look at a few players and see what has happened so far. So, for purposes of this episode, I am only going to talk about men's singles, and I will be talking about the women's singles next week. So, the first player I want to look at is Frances Tiafoe, who was ranked 10th in the tournament. So, in round 2, he faced Roberto Carballes Baena, and he won in 2 sets. Then he moved on to the third round, in which he faced Ugo Humbert, and he won in 2 sets as well. And then in the fourth round, he faced Holger Rune, and that was when he had to retire due to an injury, so Holger was able to move on. Now, it is sad seeing Tiafoe hurt. He was having such a great run in the tournament. I hope he feels better, and I cannot wait to see the next tournament that he participates in. Now, the next player I want to focus on is Ben Shelton, the man who just came off of a National Bank Open final win, like I just mentioned beforehand, and he is currently ranked 5th in the tournament. He faced Camilo Ugo Carabelli in the second round and won in 2 sets. He then faced Roberto Bautista Agut in round 3, and he ended up winning in 2 sets. And then he faced Yuri Lehecka in round 4, and he won in 2 sets. So he was moving on to the quarterfinals. Now, the next player I want to look at is Sasha Zverev, who was ranked 3rd in the tournament. He faced Nishesh Basavaredi in round 2, and he won in 2 straight sets. He then went on to face Brandon Nakashima in round 3, and he won in 2 straight sets. He then went on to face Karen Khachanov, who was just coming off of a National Bank Open loss against Ben Shelton. He faced him in round 4, and he ended up winning because Karen had to retire due to injury. And then that's where he met up with Ben Shelton in the quarterfinal. And Sasha ended up winning in 2 sets. So Shelton was eliminated, and Sasha was moving on to the semifinal. Now, the next player I want to focus on is Carlos Alcaraz, who was ranked 2nd in the tournament. He faced Damir Dzumhur in round 2, and he won in 3 sets. He then faced Hamad Medjedovic in round 3, and he won in 2 sets. He then faced Luca Nardi in round 4, and he won in 2 sets, so he was moving on to the quarterfinals. And in the quarterfinals, he faced Andrei Rublev, and he won in 3 sets. So, then he was moving on to the semifinal, in which he was facing Sasha, and he ended up winning in 3 sets. So, Sasha was eliminated, and Alcaraz was moving on to his 7th straight final. And the last player I want to look at is Jannik Sinner, who was ranked 1st overall in this tournament. He faced Alejandro Galán in round 2 and won in 2 sets. He then went on to face Gabriel Diallo in round 3 and won in 2 sets. He then faced Adrian Manarino in round 4, and he won in 2 sets. So, he was moving on to the quarterfinal. And in the quarterfinal, he faced Felix Auger-Aliassime, and he won in 2 sets. So he was moving on to the semifinal. And then in the semifinal, he faced Terence Ahmed, and he won in 2 sets. So in the final, we have Jannik Sinner facing Carlos Alcaraz. Now, we have seen beforehand that they have faced each other before, both in the French Open final and the Wimbledon final. So, I mean, we all know how great of a matchup this is going to be. And by the time this episode airs, that day will be the day that we will see who will win the Cincinnati Open final. Now, just as a prediction, I do think that Alcaraz is going to win. I think the reason why is because he's going to remember that loss in Wimbledon, and I think that is just going to be the fire that is just going to ignite. Now, I don't think this is going to be a straight sweep. I think that this is going to go on to like 3 or 4 sets, like their matchup usually does. So I'm really excited to see this. I cannot wait for this matchup. It's always a great matchup to see. And let's just see what happens. But that takes us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to tune in next Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I will be talking about the Cincinnati Open for women's singles. I will be talking about college football because we will have the big games that weekend. I'll be talking about the NFL and so much more. See you next week. Bye.